The moment a royal guard broke protocol for a little girl brought emotional reactions worldwide. It was a sunny morning in London. The sky was blue with just a few white clouds drifting above the rooftops of the grand Buckingham Palace. Spring had arrived, and the gardens around the palace were filled with blooming flowers and the soft sound of birds chirping in the trees. Tourists from all over the world had gathered in front of the palace gates, standing behind black metal barriers, waiting for something special, the changing of the guard. For many, this would be their first time seeing this famous ceremony, where soldiers dressed in red coats and tall black hats march in perfect steps. Among the crowd stood a little girl named Emily. She was only 7 years old and had traveled all the way from Canada with her mother. It was her first time visiting London, and she had read about the royal guards in a book at school. Ever since then, she had been fascinated by them. She didn't care much about castles or even the Queen. What she really wanted was to see a royal guard, one of those tall, serious men who never smiled and never moved, no matter what. To her, they were like statues that could breathe. Emily wore a red coat, just like the guards, and her long brown hair was tied in a braid. In one hand, she held a small Union Jack flag that she had bought from a souvenir shop near the palace. In her other hand was something very special, a drawing she had made the night before at the hotel. It was a picture of a guard in full uniform, standing tall with a kind smile. She had colored the coat bright red and had drawn hearts around him. On the top, in careful letters, she had written, "For the brave soldier." Emily's mother had explained to her that the guards don't speak or move, and that they are not allowed to talk to people. But Emily didn't want to talk to them. She just wanted to give one of them her drawing. That was her only wish that day. As the crowd waited, the sound of drums began to fill the air. Everyone turned to look down the street, where a group of guards was marching in perfect rhythm. Their boots hit the ground in unison, and their shiny brass instruments caught the sunlight. Emily's eyes grew wide with wonder. She had seen pictures of them before, but nothing compared to seeing them in real life. They looked so tall, so strong, and so serious. The guards passed by slowly, their faces still and unreadable. The ceremony went on like clockwork, every movement precise, every step carefully measured. The crowd watched in silence, taking photos and videos with their phones. Emily was too small to see over the adults in front of her, so her mother lifted her up. From her new height, she could finally see the guards clearly, and her heart beat faster. When the ceremony ended and the guards began to return to their posts, the crowd started clapping quietly, admiring the show. But Emily wasn't clapping. She was focused. She held up her drawing, hoping one of the guards would notice. She waved it a little, standing at the very front of the barrier now, as her mother gently placed her down again. The guard closest to them was standing just a few feet away, completely still, his eyes looking straight ahead. Emily whispered softly, "Excuse me, sir, this is for you." Of course, the guard didn't reply, he didn't even look at her. But Emily didn't give up. She stood on her tiptoes, arms stretched as high as it could go, the drawing flapping slightly in the breeze. Then something unexpected happened. The guard, without breaking his posture, moved his eyes slightly, just enough to glance at the little girl. Emily noticed and gasped a little. The guard had seen her. A moment later, to the amazement of the people nearby, the guard took one single step forward. His tall figure, once still like a statue, was now moving. Gasps and murmurs ran through the crowd. It was rare, almost unheard of, for a guard to break formation. The man in the tall hat bent slightly at the waist, and with his gloved hand, he reached toward the drawing Emily was holding. His movements were graceful but deliberate. He took the drawing carefully, then stood tall again, returning to his position. Emily's eyes lit up with joy. Her mouth opened in surprise and then curled into a bright smile. She turned to her mother, who had tears in her eyes. Around them, people were speechless. Some had caught the moment on their phones. Others simply stared, unsure if what they had seen was even real. The guard didn't speak. He didn't nod or smile, but his actions said enough. He had acknowledged the little girl. He had accepted her gift. And in doing so, he had done something that broke centuries of tradition, something gentle, human, and kind. It was over in just a few seconds, but it felt like much longer. As the guards continued their movements, returning to their posts, the moment passed. But for Emily and everyone who saw it, something beautiful had happened. Back at the hotel that evening, Emily's mother told her again how special that moment was. "You know," she said gently, "they're not supposed to do that. He could get in trouble." Emily looked worried. Did I do something wrong? No, sweetheart, her mother smiled. You did something right. You showed kindness, and maybe today kindness mattered more than rules. Later that night, Emily fell asleep with a smile on her face, hugging her Union Jack flag like a teddy bear. She didn't know that the video taken by a tourist nearby had already started spreading online. It was posted on social media with the caption, "Royal Guard breaks protocol for little girl." Within hours, the video was shared thousands of times. People from all over the world watched it, some smiling, some wiping tears from their eyes. In different countries and in many languages, people talked about the moment. Some said it reminded them of their own children. Others said it showed that even in the most serious jobs, a little kindness can still shine through. News outlets picked up the story. Headlines read, "Royal Guard's silent gesture melts hearts worldwide." Some questioned if he would be punished. But most praised him for showing humanity behind the uniform. Back in Canada, Emily's father watched the video on the news and hugged his daughter tightly over a video call. "That's my brave girl," he said proudly. Emily giggled. She didn't fully understand why the moment had become so big. She was just happy that someone had taken her drawing. As for the guard, his name was not yet known to the public. To many, he remained a mystery, a tall figure in red who had broken a rule but won hearts. Behind the gates of Buckingham Palace, no official comment had yet been made. But those who understood the strict discipline of the guards knew what it meant. To take even one step forward, to interact with someone from the public, it was not allowed. And yet in that one small act, he had shown that sometimes rules can pause, even if just for a second, when faced with something pure and honest. For Emily, the day had been more than she had hoped for. She had seen a real guard, given him her drawing, and felt something she couldn't quite explain. She didn't need to understand history or tradition. She just knew that someone had listened to her, even without speaking. And for the millions who watched the video later, many of them far away from London, it was a reminder of something simple. That sometimes the most powerful moments are the quiet ones, a little girl with a gift, and a soldier who chose, in that moment, to receive it. The video of the Royal Guard taking the little girl's drawing did not stay just in one person's phone for long. It was shared on social media by a tourist who had happened to capture the exact moment. He didn't know who the girl was or even the guard's name. He only knew what he saw, something beautiful, something rare. He titled the post, "A Guard with a Gentle Heart." At first, a few friends liked and shared the post. Then, within an hour, thousands had seen it. By the time the sun set in London, millions of people had watched the video. Comments flooded in from people all over the world. Some said they watched the video over and over and cried every time. Others said it reminded them of the goodness in the world. It was just a small act, just a single step and a small bend, but it spoke louder than any words could. The guard had not said a thing. But what he did said everything. Back in their hotel room, Emily and her mother had no idea what was happening online. They were still talking about their day, laughing softly as Emily told her mom how tall the guard was and how heavy his hat must be. Her mother smiled, knowing it had been a special day, but she didn't yet understand how truly special it had become. The next morning, they went downstairs to have breakfast in the hotel's dining area. As they sat down, a man at a nearby table looked up from his phone and then looked at Emily. "Are you the little girl from the palace?" he asked with a gentle smile. Emily's mom looked surprised. "What do you mean?" He turned his phone toward them and pressed play. There on the screen was the video, Emily, tiny in her red coat, holding out her drawing and the guard stepping forward to take it. Her mother gasped softly. That's you, Emily." Emily looked at herself in the video and giggled. "That's my drawing." The man told them the video had gone viral. "Everyone's talking about it," he said. "It's everywhere. People are saying it's the most touching thing they've seen in years." Later that day, Emily's mother received a message from a friend back in Canada, then another, and another. Her phone wouldn't stop buzzing. News channels had started airing the video. Headlines appeared online. "Royal Guard warms hearts with unexpected act," and little girl's gift breaks through royal tradition. That afternoon, a reporter came to the hotel, kindly asking for an interview. Emily's mother was hesitant. She didn't want her daughter to be overwhelmed or confused. But after talking to Emily and seeing her excitement, she agreed, as long as they kept everything respectful and simple. During the short interview, Emily smiled shyly and held up a new drawing she had made, another guard, this time with a golden heart on his chest. When asked how she felt when the guard took her drawing, she said, "Happy. He was very kind. I think he liked it." People watching the interview at home found themselves tearing up again. There was something innocent and pure in Emily's words. She hadn't done it for attention. She hadn't expected anything. She had simply wanted to say thank you in the way she knew best, with colors, paper, and love. Back at Buckingham Palace, however, things were a little more serious. The guards had rules, very strict ones. They were trained to stay silent, keep still, and never engage with the public. These rules had been followed for hundreds of years. The guard who took the drawing, now identified as Sergeant Thomas Reed, knew this better than anyone. When he was called into a private room by his superior officers, he stood tall. He was ready for whatever came. Some believed he would be scolded, maybe even punished for breaking protocol. But what happened next surprised even him. One of the senior officers looked at him carefully and said, "You understand the rules and you broke one." Sergeant Reed nodded. "Yes, sir, I did." "But you did it," the officer continued, "because in that moment you saw something that mattered more." Reed didn't respond. He didn't need to. The officer gave a small nod. "There will be no punishment. We serve with strength, yes, but also with heart." Later that day, a message from the British Army's official account was posted online. It didn't name the guard, but it confirmed the story was true. It read, "Our guards represent tradition, discipline, and duty, but they are also human. Yesterday, one of our own showed kindness in a way that reminded the world what service truly means. We stand by his decision." That short message was shared over 1 million times. People praised the Army for understanding. Many wrote long posts about how one small gesture can change someone's life, or even the mood of the world. Meanwhile, back in Canada, Emily's father was watching everything unfold with pride. He worked long hours and had not been able to join the trip, but now he felt like he was right there with them. He printed out a photo of Emily from the video and taped it to his desk at work. His coworkers came by to congratulate him. "That's your daughter?" one asked. "She's amazing," another said. "What a moment!" Emily's story began appearing in newspapers, magazines, and television reports across different countries. Some articles focused on the guards' action. Others told the story from Emily's view, a little girl with a big heart. But through all the noise, Emily remained just a child. She still liked coloring, eating pancakes, and watching cartoons. Her mother made sure to keep her protected from the pressure. Whenever people asked for more interviews, she would kindly say no if it seemed too much for Emily. A few days later, something special happened. They received an invitation. Not just from anyone, it was from the palace. The letter was printed on royal paper with a golden seal. It invited Emily and her mother for a quiet, private visit inside the palace gardens, a place tourists never get to see. The note was signed with warm wishes from staff members who had seen the video and had been touched by it. Emily was overjoyed. She danced around the hotel room, holding the letter like a treasure. When the day came, a royal car arrived to pick them up. Emily wore her favorite red coat again, and this time she carried a small folder of new drawings, just in case. Inside the palace, they were greeted by kind staff who led them through beautiful hallways filled with history. The gardens were peaceful and filled with the scent of fresh flowers. Birds flew gently through the air, and everything seemed quiet and magical. Then from behind a tall hedge, a familiar figure appeared. It was Sergeant Thomas Reed. He was dressed in his formal uniform but without the tall black hat. His expression was gentle and his eyes lit up when he saw Emily. For the first time, he smiled. Emily ran forward and the two stood for a moment, unsure what to say. Then Emily reached into her folder and pulled out another drawing. This one was of both of them, the guard and the little girl, standing together with a rainbow above their heads. Reed took the drawing and nodded with a soft "thank you." It was the first word he had spoken to her. They spent some time walking in the garden, talking about simple things, flowers, colors, and dreams. Emily told him she wanted to be an artist or maybe someone who helps people. Reed listened carefully and told her, "I think you already are someone who helps people just by being you." Before they left, Emily gave him a hug. It was a warm, happy moment, not loud, not dramatic, but full of meaning. Back at the hotel, Emily told her mother, "This was the best day ever." And it truly was. But what they didn't know was that this was only the middle of the story. There were still more people to meet, more hearts to touch, and more lives to inspire. Emily and the guard had become symbols of something bigger than themselves. A symbol of connection, kindness, and the idea that sometimes even the strongest walls can be softened by a child's heart and a soldier's hand. The story of Emily and the kind guard had already touched millions of people. But what no one could have expected was how far that moment would reach and how deeply it would affect people from different parts of the world. The quiet exchange between a little girl and a royal guard had become more than just a story. It had become a symbol of kindness, innocence, and the power of small actions. In the days that followed their private meeting at Buckingham Palace, Emily and her mother returned to Canada. Life slowly began to go back to normal, but the memory of that day stayed close to their hearts. Emily still talked about the guard often. She kept a photo of them in her room and pinned one of her drawings, the one with the rainbow and hearts, on her wall. Every night before bed, she would smile at it and remember his gentle smile. But while Emily had returned home, the story she had helped create continued to spread. News outlets in countries like India, Japan, Brazil, and South Africa picked up the story. Some translated it into their own languages. Videos about it were made with soft music and subtitles. People shared it with messages like, "This gave me hope again," or "Proof that good still exists." One video, made by a teacher in a small school in Kenya, showed a classroom full of children watching Emily's video. Afterward, they talked about how small acts of kindness can make the world a better place. They even wrote letters to the brave little girl and the smiling soldier, thanking them for reminding them to always be kind. Those letters were posted online and later mailed to Emily by a volunteer group. Back in London, Sergeant Thomas Reed was still doing his duty. Each day he wore his red uniform and tall bearskin hat, standing straight, guarding the palace with the same strength and discipline he always had. But something was different now. People recognized him. Some tourists would look at him with respect and whisper, "That's him." Others simply smiled and nodded, showing silent appreciation. Of course, Reed didn't break his role again. He stayed still as the rules required. But inside, he carried the memory of that moment like a light. It reminded him of why he had joined the Guards in the first place, to serve, to protect, and to represent something greater than himself. One day, during a break, a fellow guard handed him a small envelope. "This came for you," he said. Inside were several folded pages, drawings from children around the world. Some had drawn him and Emily. Others had drawn guards smiling or standing with children. One letter, written in large, careful handwriting, said, "Dear Mr. Guard, thank you for showing the world that strong people can also be kind." Reed smiled softly. He didn't speak often about that day, but he kept those letters in a small box in his locker. To him, they were a reminder of something very special, not just the moment itself, but the wave of kindness it had created. Meanwhile, Emily's story had also reached the hearts of people who had faced difficult times. In a small hospital in Australia, a young girl named Lily, who was recovering from a long illness, watched the video of Emily and the guard every morning. It became part of her healing routine. Her nurses noticed that she smiled more after watching it. When asked why she liked it so much, Lily said, "It makes me feel like the world is still full of good people." A letter was sent to Emily from Lily's hospital, thanking her for being a light in someone's dark days. When Emily's mother read it to her, Emily hugged the letter tightly and whispered, "I want to send Lily a drawing." So she did. Emily carefully drew two girls holding hands under a tree with hearts floating above them. She wrote, "Dear Lily, you are strong and beautiful. I'm happy you smiled. From your friend Emily." The letter and drawing were sent with care. A few weeks later, a photo came back, Lily holding Emily's drawing with the biggest smile on her face. Back in Canada, Emily's school also began noticing the effect the story had on the students. Her teacher, Mrs. Harper, decided to create a project called the Kindness Chain. Each student had to do something kind for someone else and then write about it or draw it. The chain grew longer every week. Some students helped their neighbors, others made cards for people in hospitals, and some even wrote letters to their parents saying thank you for taking care of them. Emily was proud. Not because people were calling her a hero, but because people were being kind, just like she had hoped when she first made her little drawing in London. Then something else happened, something she never expected. One morning, her mother received a phone call from an office in London. It was an invitation, not just from the palace, but from a large children's charity that worked with schools and hospitals. They wanted to honor Emily and Sergeant Reed for reminding the world that acts of kindness can inspire people of all ages. They were organizing a special event to celebrate those who had made a difference in the world through kindness and compassion. At first, Emily's mother hesitated. It was a long flight, and Emily was still just a little girl. But when she asked Emily how she felt about it, Emily said, "Can I see the guard again?" That made the decision easy. A few weeks later, Emily and her mother returned to London, not as tourists this time, but as special guests. The event was held in a large hall filled with families, children, teachers, and community helpers. Banners decorated the walls with the words, "One kind act can change the world." Emily sat quietly in the front row, wearing a simple dress with a small red ribbon. Sergeant Reed stood beside the stage in his full uniform, still and proud. When the moment came, the host stepped up and said, "This next story is one you may have already seen, a moment between a girl with a drawing and a guard with a heart. But what followed reminded the world that kindness is not weakness, it is strength." The crowd clapped softly as Emily was invited to the stage. She was a little nervous, but she walked up, holding her mother's hand. When she looked out at the smiling faces, she felt safe. Reed was then invited to stand beside her. As he did, Emily looked up and gave him a small wave. He returned it with a slight nod. Together, they received a medal called the Heart of Hope Award. It wasn't made of gold or diamonds. It was simple, a small silver heart with a ribbon, but it meant more than any trophy. When asked if she wanted to say something, Emily took the microphone and said just a few words. "Kindness makes people happy. Even one drawing can help someone. I hope we all be kind." The applause that followed wasn't loud or wild. It was warm, full of feeling, and full of respect. People stood, not just for the little girl and the royal guard, but for what they stood for. Later that evening, as the event ended, Reed and Emily spoke for a while in a quiet corner of the hall. He told her he had kept her drawing safe, and that it reminded him every day why his job mattered. Emily smiled and said, "I'm glad you took it." He replied gently, "So am I." As they said goodbye once more, they knew their story had become something bigger than them. It had grown into a message shared in homes, classrooms, hospitals, and hearts around the world. It had started with a child's drawing, simple, honest, and full of love, and it had touched the world in ways neither of them could have imagined. After returning from London the second time, Emily felt something new inside her heart. It was not just happiness, it was a quiet feeling of hope. She had always liked drawing and sharing kind words, but now she knew that even a small act could make a big difference. Her drawing had been just a child's gift, something she made with love and crayons. But it had traveled across the world and touched the hearts of people she had never met. At school, things slowly began to change. The kindness chain project that her teacher started had grown so large that it became part of every class. Children looked forward to doing kind things, writing stories about them, and decorating the classroom walls with drawings and messages of hope. One day, the school principal announced during morning assembly, "This school has become a place where kindness walks in every hallway. And we have a certain young girl to thank for reminding us." Emily felt shy but proud. She didn't want attention. She only wanted people to keep caring. One morning, a letter arrived at Emily's house. It was in a beautiful envelope with a golden stamp. When her mother opened it, her eyes widened with surprise. "Emily," she said with a warm smile, "you've been invited to speak at a global children's event, one where kids from around the world come together to share stories about peace, hope, and kindness." Emily was quiet for a moment. "Do I have to speak in front of everyone?" Her mother knelt beside her. "Only if you want to, but your story has already spoken to so many people. Maybe it's time you told it in your own voice." Emily looked down at her hands, then nodded slowly. "Okay, I'll try." Weeks passed, and the event day arrived. It was held in a large auditorium filled with children, teachers, and guests from different countries. Flags from all around the world hung from the ceiling. There were children wearing traditional clothes, others with ribbons and colorful pins, and everyone had one thing in common: they believed in kindness. When it was Emily's turn, she walked to the stage with her notes in her small hands. Her heart beat fast, but she remembered the guard's calm face and the gentle way he had taken her drawing. That memory gave her strength. She spoke softly but clearly. "A few months ago, I gave a drawing to a royal guard. I didn't think anything big would happen. I just wanted to say thank you, but something did happen, something big. People all over the world smiled, some cried, some wrote letters. It made people feel warm inside. She looked around the hall. I think one kind action can go a long, long way. You don't need to be famous or rich or big. You just need to care, that's all. When she finished, the room was silent for a moment, and then the applause came. It wasn't loud or noisy, but gentle and full of respect. Children stood up, clapping with big smiles. Teachers nodded with tears in their eyes. And somewhere in the back row, a man in uniform sat quietly, proud and moved. It was Sergeant Thomas Reed. He had flown from London without telling Emily, wanting to support her in person. After the event, Emily met children from many places. They told her how her story had helped them talk to their families, try new things, and believe in small dreams again. One boy from Germany said, "When I saw your video, I gave a thank you card to my bus driver." He smiled for the first time in weeks. Another girl from Egypt said, "Your story made me draw pictures for the nurses in the hospital. They were so happy." Every story was like a new branch growing from the tree of kindness that Emily had planted. As Emily and her mother returned home again, life slowly became quiet, but in a good way. The cameras were gone, the reporters had moved on, and the headlines had faded, but kindness had stayed. It was now part of their everyday lives. They still received letters from time to time, from children, teachers, even parents who said thank you. One afternoon, Emily was in her room working on a drawing, this time of the earth surrounded by tiny hearts. Her mother came in holding another letter. "It's from London again," she said. Emily opened it quickly. Inside was a letter with neat handwriting and the royal palace seal. It read, "Dear Emily, please accept this small invitation to attend a royal spring ceremony as an honorary guest. We would be honored by your presence." Emily's eyes widened. "Am I going back again?" Her mother smiled. "Yes, one more time." And so, for the third time, Emily boarded a flight to London. This time, the visit was different. It wasn't about a news story. It wasn't about speeches. It was about gratitude. The spring ceremony was held in a private part of the palace garden. There were flowers blooming, light music playing, and guests quietly walking around enjoying the afternoon sun. Emily wore a soft blue dress and carried with her a small envelope. Inside was one final drawing, her way of saying thank you again. As she arrived, Sergeant Reed was there to greet her. He was dressed in formal wear, not in guard uniform this time. He smiled widely and said, "Welcome back, Miss Emily." Emily giggled. "Hello again." During the ceremony, a few quiet words were shared by palace staff. They spoke of how sometimes it is not the size of an action that matters, but the heart behind it. They thanked both Emily and Sergeant Reed for showing the world that duty and kindness can live side by side. Emily was presented with a golden pin shaped like a heart and a handwritten letter from a member of the royal family. Though the ceremony was quiet and simple, it meant the world to Emily and her family. Before leaving the palace grounds, Emily walked with Sergeant Reed through a garden path lined with white roses. She handed him her final drawing. It was of a guard and a little girl holding a giant heart together. Underneath, she had written, "Kindness never ends." Reed looked at it for a long time, then folded it gently and said, "This will stay with me forever." They said goodbye with a warm handshake and a promise to always keep spreading kindness wherever they went. As Emily and her mother flew back home, Emily looked out the airplane window at the clouds below. "Do you think people will remember the story?" she asked. Her mother smiled. "Maybe not everyone will remember the video. But I think many people will remember how it made them feel." And that was true, because the story of Emily and the Royal Guard was never about fame or attention. It was about a feeling, the kind of feeling that stays in someone's heart, even after the moment has passed. It was about the power of a child's drawing and the quiet courage of a soldier who chose, just once, to bend the rules for the sake of something good. And in that gentle moment between two strangers, one small, one tall, the world found a reason to believe in kindness again. Time passed. Seasons changed, leaves turned golden, then fell, and snow quietly blanketed streets across countries. The story of Emily and the Royal Guard no longer filled the headlines or flooded social media. But something much more important had happened. The story had settled into people's hearts, not loudly but deeply. Even though the world had moved on to other news, the memory of that small act, a guard stepping out of tradition, and a girl offering a simple drawing lived quietly in homes, schools, and hearts around the globe. It became a story parents told their children at bedtime. It became a lesson in classrooms. It became a reason to believe again in small moments and the power they hold. In Emily's hometown, life had become beautifully ordinary again. She went to school every day, carried her backpack filled with notebooks and crayons, and laughed with her friends during recess. She still loved drawing and now added kind messages under every picture she made. "Be someone's smile today," she once wrote under a sketch of two birds sharing a worm. Another time she wrote, "Kindness is quiet but strong," beneath a picture of a tree protecting a small flower from the rain. Though the cameras were gone and the interviews had ended, Emily remained the same little girl she had always been, curious, gentle, and full of quiet courage. One afternoon, her teacher, Mrs. Harper, gathered the class. She held up a book. "This," she said with a smile, "is something very special." It was a new children's book, freshly printed, with a beautiful cover showing a red-coated guard and a little girl holding hands under a blooming tree. The title was "The Girl with the Drawing." Emily's eyes grew wide. "It's about you," her teacher said gently, "and it's going to be read by children all over the world." The book had been written by a gentle author who had followed Emily's story from the beginning. He had asked for permission to turn it into a storybook, one that would carry the message of kindness, bravery, and quiet connection for generations to come. Emily and her family agreed, not because they wanted more attention, but because they hoped the message would live on. Soon, libraries in different countries had copies. It was read in classrooms in Spain, South Korea, Nigeria, and Brazil. A mother in a small town in Italy read it to her children. A teacher in a mountain village in Nepal used it to start a kindness week. The story was no longer just a moment caught on video. It had become something greater, a quiet movement of the heart. 1 year passed since that special day in front of Buckingham Palace. On the anniversary, Emily received a small package in the mail. It was wrapped in brown paper and had no name on the front, only a small golden sticker in the shape of a crown. Inside, she found something that made her heart skip a beat. It was her original drawing, the very one she had handed to the guard that day. It had been kept safe and now it had returned. But this time it came with something new. On the back of the drawing, written in careful handwriting, were the words, "Dear Emily." This drawing reminded me that even the smallest voices can make the biggest echoes. I've carried it with me since then, but now I think it belongs with the one who created it. Thank you for showing the world what it means to care, with respect and kindness. Emily touched the drawing gently. It was slightly faded at the edges, but still beautiful, still full of warmth. She smiled deeply and said softly, "Welcome home." Her mother placed the letter in a frame beside the drawing. They hung it above Emily's desk, where she could see it every day as she studied and sketched. Around that same time, Sergeant Thomas Reed, still serving as a guard, was asked to give a quiet talk to a new group of recruits. He didn't often speak publicly, but on this day he agreed. He stood tall in front of the young trainees and said, "There will be moments in this job where silence is required, where rules guide every step. But there may also be rare moments, quiet, small, where kindness calls. If that moment ever comes, may you have the courage to hear it." The recruits listened with great attention. They didn't ask for details. They had all heard the story, and they knew it wasn't about breaking rules, it was about honoring humanity. Over the next few months, more stories of small kindness began to appear. A bus driver who stopped for an old man walking in the rain. A teacher who started a kindness club in a village school. A group of children who sent letters to lonely seniors. Some of them said they had been inspired by Emily's story. It was as if a spark had been lit, and others were now passing on that light. Emily and her family continued their lives with peace. They never tried to be in the spotlight again, and they didn't need to. The story had already become part of something larger. Every now and then, letters still arrived from children who had just learned about the story or from teachers starting kindness projects. Emily read every letter with care. Sometimes she wrote back. Sometimes she drew them something. One snowy morning, Emily and her mother were walking through a park. The ground was soft with fresh snow and the trees were dressed in white. A little boy nearby had dropped his toy and it rolled down a small slope. Before his parents could reach it, Emily quickly walked over, picked it up, and handed it back with a smile. The boy's mother looked at her and said kindly, "Thank you, sweetheart. That was very kind of you." Emily simply smiled and nodded. It was something small. But that's how it all had started, wasn't it? Later that day, her mother looked at her and said, "You know, I think you've changed the world." Emily looked up thoughtfully. "I didn't mean to." "I know," her mother replied. "That's what makes it even more special." And in that quiet truth was the heart of the story. A child with a drawing, a soldier with a heart, and a moment that reminded the world that no act of kindness is ever too small. Even long after people stopped talking about it, long after videos faded from the internet and news stories moved on, the message remained. That sometimes, when one person dares to care, the world listens. And that is why the moment a royal guard broke protocol for a little girl was never just about a guard or a child. It was, and always will be, about what happens when love, respect, and bravery meet in a single quiet moment.